I want you to imagine a very specific, almost universal moment.
Oh, yeah.
If you're a parent, or I mean, even an aunt or an older sibling, you've probably lived some version of this. You're standing in your kitchen, the lighting is totally normal, maybe the dishwasher is just humming in the background.
Right. Just an average Tuesday.
Exactly, an average Tuesday. And you're holding a brand new, perfectly smooth, glowing piece of glass and metal, a smartphone.
Yeah.
And standing right in front of you, looking up at you with this wild mix of reverence and, like, electric anticipation, is a 12-year-old kid.
The big moment.
Right? You are about to hand this device over to them. And I want you to really just sit with the emotional cocktail of that exact second. Because on the surface, sure, there's the excitement. It's a massive milestone.
Of course.
You're giving them independence, right? A way to text you after soccer practice, a way to connect with their friends. But right underneath that, sitting like this lead weight in your stomach, is a profound, icy dread.
Oh, absolutely. It's terrifying.
Because you know what this thing really is. You're handing them a completely unfiltered portal to the entire human experience. And actually, worse than that, you're handing the entire world a portal directly back to your kid.
I mean, it's one of the most intense thresholds a modern family crosses today. We treat it like we're just, giving them a fancy calculator that makes phone calls.
Right.
But we know, deep down, we're doing the equivalent of dropping them in the middle of Times Square at midnight and just saying, hey, have fun, be home by dinner.
Yes, that's exactly what it feels like.
We're giving them access to the sum total of human knowledge, sure, but we're also handing them a direct, unmediated connection to millions of complete strangers.
Millions.
Right. And incredibly complex, algorithmic, social dynamics and threats that our own parents never even had the vocabulary for, let alone, a strategy to actually handle.
And that tension, that exact feeling of standing in the kitchen holding the phone and feeling totally out of your depth is our mission today. So welcome to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
We're going straight into the heart of the modern digital parenting crisis today. We've got a really fascinating stack of source material focused on a very specific approach to digital child protection.
It's quite the paradigm shift we're looking at.
It really is. It centers around an app called Indre, which, by the way, translates from Danish to inner life.
Right.
We're going to break down its features, look really closely at the psychology of how it presents itself to terrified parents, and explore what looks like a massive shift in how society is starting to think about keeping kids safe online.
Yeah, the overarching theme, jumping out of these sources, is really a complete breakdown in institutional trust.
Institutional trust, meaning?
Meaning trust in the big tech companies.
Ah.
For the last decade, parents have basically relied on default safety nets.
Right. You buy the phone, you set the limit.
Exactly. You buy an iPhone, you turn on Apple's built-in parental controls, and you assume you've done your job. But the data and the specific testimonials we're looking at show that those built-in defaults are just no longer viewed as sufficient.
Not even close.
No. We're tracking a major shift here. The era of passive monitoring, where an app just tells you how many hours your kid spent on a screen, that era is dying.
Yeah.
We're moving toward active, verified protection. It's a transition from just tracking a child's behavior to fundamentally altering the digital environment to prevent trauma before it even happens.
Let's get right into that breakdown of trust, because the core tension driving all of this is a feeling of total powerlessness. The sources specifically call out recent iOS updates.
Right.
Apple, Google, the biggest tech companies on the planet. I mean, you'd assume they have thousands of engineers figuring this stuff out.
You would think so, yeah.
But the prevailing sentiment from the parents in these materials is that these default controls are fundamentally failing them. They just aren't cutting it anymore. What is missing? Why is there such a massive gap between what Apple provides and what parents actually need right now?
Well, it really comes down to the underlying architecture of what those companies are actually building. Built-in OS controls have historically been designed around device management.
Device management, not safety.
Right, not relationship management. Think about what screen time actually does. It's incredibly good at telling you your daughter spent 2 hours on TikTok or 45 minutes on iMessage.
Which is helpful, but...
Right, it's helpful data. It's fantastic at locking the phone down at 9 p.m., but it is completely blind to the context of the interactions happening within those apps. It's a quantitative tool trying to solve a highly qualitative problem.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
The anxiety the sources highlight doesn't really come from the amount of time spent online anymore. It comes from the fact that a parent feels entirely powerless, the millisecond after a message is opened or a photo is sent.
Exactly.
The device management tools don't intervene in the actual conversation. They just log that a conversation happened.
Okay, that clarifies so much. It's like we usually think of parental controls as a seatbelt, something that actively restrains you and keeps you secure when things go wrong.
Right.
But based on what we're reading about these built-in tools, they aren't a seatbelt at all. They're basically a speedometer.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. They tell you exactly how fast you're going. They give you a nice little bar chart at the end of the week. But if you're heading 90 miles an hour toward a brick wall, the speedometer doesn't hit the brakes.
No, it doesn't.
It just records the crash. You have all this data, but absolutely zero intervention.
I'd actually take that analogy even further.
Yeah.
It's not just a speedometer. It's a speedometer in a car where the windows are totally blacked out.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You know the car is moving, you know how long it's been running, but you have absolutely no idea who else is in the passenger seat.
That is terrifying.
It is. Traditional controls focus almost exclusively on access. But the crash you're talking about, like the perverse message, the unsolicited explicit image, the grooming attempt, that doesn't just happen when they're breaking curfew.
Right. It's not just a 2 a.m. problem.
Exactly. It happens at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, well within the allowed access time. The anxiety comes from the black box of the chat interface itself. And that is the exact anxiety gap that an app like Indre is stepping into. They aren't selling time limits. They're selling visibility and intervention inside that black box.
And the sources point out a highly specific, highly vulnerable demographic caught in this black box.
Yeah.
We're looking at children, specifically highlighting girls between the ages of 11 and 14.
Yes, a very critical age.
This is that specific window where you have this massive, explosive spike in social media use. There's this absolute biological need to connect with peers and be validated, but their emotional maturity and impulse control are still very much under construction.
It's the perfect storm developmentally. I mean, at 11 to 14, peer validation isn't just a want. Neurologically, it feels like a literal survival need.
Wow.
The brain is actively rewiring itself to prioritize social standing. But the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for long-term planning, risk assessment, impulse control, that is years away from being fully formed.
Right. They just don't have the hardware for it yet.
Exactly. So you have individuals who are highly motivated to seek out digital connection, but biologically unequipped to navigate complex, potentially malicious digital interactions.
Which makes them prime targets.
Yeah.
And the sources do not shy away from this at all. They outline severe real-world threats. We're talking exposure to hardcore sexual content, perverse messages from strangers, sophisticated grooming tactics, and having images saved or shared without their consent.
Yeah.
We aren't talking about kids just staying up too late playing Minecraft anymore. We're talking about profound emotional and psychological threats.
And it's crucial to understand the mechanics of how those threats operate today, because grooming isn't some shadowy figure in a trench coat hanging around a playground.
Right.
It's someone posing as a 14-year-old boy in a Roblox server or a Snapchat group. The material describes these not as hypothetical fringe cases, but as an increasing baseline reality that parents are acutely aware of.
The baseline has shifted.
The baseline of the internet has totally shifted, and parents know the old tools are completely outmatched.
So if you're a company trying to sell a solution to a problem this terrifying, how do you even approach the parent? Because this anxiety is so universal, it perfectly informs how these solutions are presented to the public.
It does.
Our sources gave us a really fascinating look under the hood of a highly specific piece of marketing for Indre Live. It's a user-generated content video, a UGC ad, and I really want to walk you through exactly what this looks like because every single visual and auditory choice is engineered with surgical precision.
Oh, the anatomy of this advertisement is really a masterclass in behavioral psychology and modern marketing.
It really is.
When you're selling a product that deals with such deep-seated fear, the messenger is just as important as the message itself.
Absolutely. So let's picture this. It's a vertical video, 9.16 aspect ratio.
Yeah.
It's meant to be watched on a phone, probably sandwiched between cooking videos and dance trends on TikTok or Instagram Reels.
Right in the feed.
Right in the feed. We open on a caring Danish mother, mid-30s. She has natural, soft makeup. She's wearing casual, comfortable clothes. She's sitting in her living room, which looks incredibly cozy, very hig, and she's bathed in this warm, natural daylight streaming in from a window.
It sets a very specific mood.
It does.
Yeah.
And the camera quality isn't some high-end cinema lens. It looks like the front-facing camera of an iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
There's a slight, natural handheld movement. It's not locked off on a rigid tripod. She's just holding her phone, looking directly at the camera with an honest, emotional, but really calm tone.
Notice how many traditional advertising rules that breaks right off the bat.
Oh, all of them.
There's no studio lighting, no sweeping crane shot, no polished voiceover actor.
Okay.
The entire setup is designed to completely bypass the viewer's defense mechanisms.
How so?
Well, when you scroll past a slick corporate tech ad where everything is a sterile white void and an actor is smiling enthusiastically at a floating hologram, your brain immediately tags it as, oh, someone is trying to sell me something.
Right, you just swipe past it.
Exactly, you put your guard up. But a vertical video with a slight camera shake, featuring a casually dressed woman in her sunlit living room, your brain tags that as a peer sharing a story.
It feels completely unpolished, which paradoxically makes it the most polished possible format for social media right now.
It really is.
It feels honest.
Yeah.
Like she's just sharing her real experience with other parents.
Yeah.
Like a friend sitting across from you on the couch with a cup of coffee, confessing a real struggle.
The psychology here is brilliant.
Yeah.
Because if I'm a parent drowning in that icy dread we talked about earlier, I don't want a tech CEO in a turtleneck telling me he solved parenting.
Definitely not.
I want another mom to look me in the eye and say, I was terrified too, and I found a way out.
It's the establishment of immediate radical empathy. The viewer sees this woman and instantly maps their own life onto hers.
Yes. And the warm lighting in the cozy living room aren't just aesthetic choices either. They actually signal safety.
Okay, expand on that.
They create a subconscious contrast. The outside digital world is chaotic, dark, and dangerous. But inside this home, it is warm, grounded, and protected. It establishes a sanctuary.
And the script she's given perfectly traces that emotional arc. She speaks directly to the camera very naturally, and she starts right in the fear. She says, quote, "After the new iOS update, I still didn't feel it was enough to protect my two girls. They are 12 and 13 years old, and I was really scared that someone could get hold of sexual pictures or videos of them or send them perverse messages." End quote.
Wow.
She doesn't use sanitized corporate language. She uses the exact words running through the viewer's head. Really scared. Sexual pictures, perverse messages.
She validates the viewer's paranoia. By explicitly naming the failure of the iOS update, she gives the viewer permission to stop blaming themselves for feeling out of control.
Yeah, like it's not your fault. Apple's tools aren't working.
Right. It's a classic narrative structure compressed into 60 seconds. She introduces the inciting incident, the girls hitting that vulnerable 12 and 13 age bracket, and the failure of default tech. Then she articulates the stakes, which are incredibly high. The threat of sexual exploitation.
Right, and then she goes into the action phase. She says, "Then I heard everyone talking positively about Indre Live, so I couldn't wait to download it on their iPhones. First, they did identity verification with their passport and documents. After that, the app helped us set up real protection."
And that phrase, real protection.
Real protection, right. And she lists off the features. Now I could approve who they talk to, block perverse messages and sexual content before they even see it, and get warnings if something looks wrong. And then we hit the resolution. The visual prompt notes that by the end of the video, she looks calm, relieved, and genuinely happy. She finishes by saying, "My girls are so much happier and more relaxed now they can use social media and TikTok without me being terrified the whole time. I'm just really grateful this app exists."
It's the full restoration of the emotional baseline. The marketing understands something fundamental here. Parents aren't buying a software subscription.
Yeah.
They don't care about the CUD. They are buying an end to the terror. They are buying the ability to sit in their living room and drink a cup of coffee without wondering if their daughter is being groomed in the next room over. The product being sold is quite literally peace of mind.
But here is where the video gets incredibly clever. The source material outlines the B-roll, the cutaway shots we see while she's talking.
Yeah, let's talk about the visuals.
We see quick shots of her looking worried while scrolling on her phone. We see a quick identity verification flow in the app. We see the clean UI showing blocked content. But when it shows her daughters using their iPhones, the 12 and 13-year-old she's so desperately trying to protect, the prompt specifically dictates that they are seen from behind or from the side.
Yes.
Their faces are never clearly shown. Think about the layers there. It's a marketing video about a privacy app, and the video itself is actively practicing privacy on the child actors.
It's a brilliant, subtle cue. It operates on a completely subliminal level. If they paraded these young girls in front of the camera, showing their faces clearly to millions of viewers on TikTok just to sell a product, it would deeply subvert the core philosophy of the brand.
It would feel so exploitative.
Exactly. By hiding their faces, the brand is signaling to the parent, we understand the assignment, we believe children's physical identity should be shielded from the public internet, and we practice what we preach, even when it costs us a more engaging marketing shot.
Wow.
It builds an immense amount of subconscious trust.
And even the text on the screen is working on us. You know how on TikTok you have those text overlays popping up, reinforcing what the person is saying?
Sure.
The source notes that the on-screen text for this add things like, I was scared for my 12 and 13-year-old girls, and they finally feel safe online. It uses a clean, modern font, and it is white with a soft cyan glow. Why cyan? It's not an alarm bell red. It's not a caution tape yellow. It's cyan.
Color psychology plays a massive role in how we process information, especially in high-anxiety contexts like this.
Okay, break that down.
If the text glowed red, it would elevate the viewer's heart rate. It would trigger the fight-or-flight response, which is already hovering right near the surface for a parent thinking about these topics. Red screams emergency.
Right.
Danger. Cyan, on the other hand, is a cool, regulating color. In visual design, it's heavily associated with clarity, tranquility, and the medical or protective fields.
Oh, like hospital scrubs.
Exactly. Or the branding of major cybersecurity firms. Cyan feels clean, it feels clinical, and most importantly, it feels safe. The entire visual and auditory package, the warm home, the calm tone, the hidden faces, the cyan text, it is an engineered emotional journey.
It really is.
It takes the parent from a state of paralyzed terror to a state of hopeful, regulated action.
Okay, so the mother in this cozy living room is sold, and frankly, if I'm scrolling and I see that ad, I'm probably downloading it too. But now we have to transition from the marketing to the actual mechanics. How does this app pull off this massive promise of safety? Because the source material takes us into the technical reality of the app, and the very first step of onboarding is honestly completely radical compared to how we normally use phones.
It is a massive departure from standard consumer software practices. We are heavily conditioned to expect frictionless onboarding.
Right. Usually you download an app, you punch in an email, you make up a password, maybe you click a link in your inbox, and boom, you have an account.
Takes 12 seconds.
Exactly. But the first major technical step for Indre Live, specifically highlighted in the video and the sources, is identity verification. And it's not just checking an email. The app requires scanning a passport or government documents, and it couples that with a biometric face scan of the children. You have to hold your 12-year-old's literal passport up to the camera and scan their face to use a parental control app.
This is the absolute crux of their protective model, and we really need to unpack how significant this is. By demanding government-issued documents and biometric confirmation, the app is establishing an unbreakable, verifiable link between the digital profile and the physical human being holding the phone.
Right.
It fundamentally alters the rules of engagement.
Because what you're doing is completely eradicating anonymity. You are burning the concept of the anonymous internet to the ground, at least within the walls of this app.
And we have to ask why that's necessary. Anonymity is the lifeblood of the bad actor. It is the primary weapon in the predator's arsenal.
How so?
Well, groomers, harassers, extortionists, they rely entirely on the asymmetry of information. They rely on the fact that they can create a profile with a stolen picture of a teenager, adopt the slang of a 14-year-old, and approach a child as a peer, when in reality they are a 40-year-old adult operating out of a basement thousands of miles away.
That's horrifying.
It is. By forcing identity verification at the gate, Indre Live strips away that cloak. If you are on the platform, you have proven you are exactly who you say you are. No one can pretend to be a child, and theoretically, no unverified adult can even approach the child's digital ecosystem.
But let's look at the friction here. I mean, giving a passport to an app feels incredibly intense.
It does.
It's like having to go to the DMV and issue a physical driver's license to your 7th grader just so they can scroll through TikTok or text their cousin. We are downloading a privacy app because we want to protect our kids' data, their images, their location from the dark corners of the internet.
Right.
But step one of protecting their privacy is handing over their government ID and a map of their facial geometry to a private software company. Isn't that a massive contradiction?
Yeah.
How do parents justify that leap?
It's the ultimate modern privacy paradox, and it's a trade-off that is becoming increasingly common. To achieve true security in a digital environment, you have to surrender a degree of absolute privacy to a trusted central authority. You are essentially trading one form of vulnerability for another.
You're giving up your data to the bouncer so the bouncer can keep the creeps out of the club.
That's a really good way to look at it. You are providing highly sensitive, verifiable data to Indre Live so that the child isn't exposed to the unverified, chaotic, and dangerous wider internet.
Yeah.
It's the creation of a walled garden. Now, the risk is real. You are trusting that this company has ironclad data security, that they are encrypting those passport scans, and that they won't suffer a data breach.
Which happens all the time.
It does, but for the parent, it's a calculation of immediate versus abstract harm. The abstract risk of a corporate data breach feels much less terrifying than the immediate daily reality of a predator messaging their daughter on Snapchat. They are willing to show their papers to the guard at the gate if it means the garden inside is actually safe.
Okay, so the passport is scanned. The face is verified. The gate is locked behind them. Once that onboarding is done, the app sets up what the mother in the video calls real protection.
Yes.
This brings us to the daily operational features of Indre Live. What does this actually look like in practice on a random Tuesday afternoon when the kid gets off the school bus and opens her phone?
Well, the first operational layer the sources detail is strict contact approval, and this alone completely changes the landscape.
The sources emphasize that parents must approve who their kids talk to. It's not just a matter of running a profanity filter over a chat window.
Right.
It is gatekeeping the relationships themselves.
Yeah.
A kid cannot initiate or receive communication unless the parent has explicitly signed off on that specific digital connection.
Think about how radically that alters the architecture of social media.
It breaks it.
It completely breaks the model. The entire business model of platforms like Instagram, TikTok, or Snapchat is built on frictionless connection. The goal is maximum network growth. Anyone can follow anyone. Anyone can jump into a comment section. Anyone can slide into a DM. By inserting parental contact approval, Indre Live injects deliberate, heavy friction into the system. It forces a pause.
Yeah.
When a request comes in, it asks the parent and the child, wait, do we actually know this person in physical reality? Is this a classmate or is this a total stranger? It shifts the network from a bustling public square where anyone can walk up to your kid into an invite-only living room.
But it goes beyond just managing the guest list. Even with approved contacts, things can go wrong. Kids fight, teenagers send things they shouldn't. The sources detail a feature called preemptive content filtering.
This is huge.
The app blocks perverse messages, sexual content, and nudity, and the absolute key phrase in the source material is before the child even sees them.
Yes.
Plus, it acts as an active monitor, sending warnings and notifications to the parents if something looks wrong.
We really need to linger on that phrase before they even see it.
Why is that so critical?
Because that is the difference between monitoring and protection. If a child receives an unsolicited, explicit image, the psychological damage is done the very millisecond those pixels render on their retina.
Right. You can't unsee it.
You cannot unsee it. The trauma has occurred. Traditional monitoring, like those built-in OS tools we discussed, would just log the event. Maybe it sends an email to the parent an hour later saying, hey, your child viewed inappropriate content.
At which point it's too late.
Exactly. At that point, the parent is just doing damage control. They're comforting a traumatized kid.
Right. So this app is acting like a digital bouncer standing directly between the internet and the kid's phone screen.
Yes.
But instead of a regular bouncer who just breaks up a fight after a punch is thrown, this bouncer is patting everyone down and confiscating the contraband before it ever enters the building. It intercepts the image in transit.
Perfect analogy.
But this raises a massive logistical and ethical question. If the app is filtering texts and alerting parents to suspicious activity, does this mean the mother in the cozy living room is sitting there reading every single text message her 13-year-old sends?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Because if I'm 13 and I know my mom is reading my texts about my crush or complaining about my math teacher, I'm finding a way around that app immediately. It's a huge violation of trust.
That is the tightrope these apps have to walk, and this is where we really have to read between the lines of the source material. It explicitly says the app offers strong oversight and warnings, but it never says the parent is provided a transcript of the child's digital life.
Oh, interesting.
In modern systems like this, the parent isn't reading the messages, the algorithm is.
Okay, explain how that works practically.
Yeah.
How does an algorithm know the difference between kids joking around and an actual predator?
It relies on sophisticated on-device machine learning. The app runs a local model that scans text strings and image hashes as they come in. It's actively trained to recognize the linguistic patterns of grooming. So, the isolation tactics, the request for secrecy, the specific escalation of sexual language. It also recognizes the visual signature of explicit imagery.
Wow.
The AI basically acts as a proxy for the parent. It reads everything, but it only flags the parent when a specific threshold of risk is actually crossed. It might send a push notification saying, "We blocked an explicit image from a contact," or "We detected language consistent with bullying."
So it provides the real control parents are desperate for, without requiring total, exhausting, privacy-destroying surveillance of every mundane conversation.
Exactly.
The kid gets to keep their private life private as long as it's safe.
Precisely. It respects the child's developmental need for privacy while fiercely guarding their physical and emotional safety. It's a highly calibrated system of trust delegation.
That is a really fine line to walk, but I can totally see why it appeals so strongly to the mother in the video. The AI bouncer handles the creeps, so she doesn't have to read her daughter's digital diary. It preserves their relationship.
It does.
But unfortunately, while the bouncer keeps the bad stuff out, our deep dive has to address the much darker realities that the sources touch upon. Because the app isn't just about preventing bad things.
No.
It has features specifically built for when things go wrong. Very wrong.
Yes. The sources detail features that move well beyond preventative filtering and cross over into active crisis management. And this reflects a very grim reality about the modern internet.
Right. We have to talk about what happens when serious threats like blackmail, sextortion, and grooming actually breach the walls. The sources introduce a feature called the private vault. This is described as secure storage for the children's own sensitive files, but with parental oversight. Why does a 12-year-old need a secure vault on their phone?
To understand the vault, you really have to understand the mechanics of digital blackmail. Sextortion is an absolute epidemic right now, particularly for the 11 to 14 demographic.
It's everywhere.
It is. Here is how it typically plays out. A child exploring their boundaries, perhaps under pressure from a peer or someone they think is a peer, takes a sensitive or explicit photo of themselves.
Okay.
On a standard, unmanaged smartphone, the moment that photo is saved to the camera roll, it becomes a massive liability.
Because it's just sitting there waiting to be exploited.
Exactly. It can be automatically uploaded to a shared family cloud folder by mistake. It can be scraped by a malicious third-party app that asks for photo permissions. Or if the child sends it, the receiver can screenshot it.
Right.
Once a bad actor has that image, they leverage it. They say, "Send me money," or "Send me more explicit content," or "I am sending this photo to your entire Instagram follower list, including your school friends and your family." The psychological pressure on the child is just unimaginable.
So the private vault is a containment protocol. It acknowledges that kids are human and they might make a mistake.
Yes.
If they take a sensitive photo, it doesn't just sit in the open camera roll. It goes into the vault. It is encrypted, locked down, and cannot be accessed by the outside internet, scraped by other apps, or stolen. It protects the child from the weaponization of their own digital footprint.
It mitigates the collateral damage of a mistake. But the sources outline an even more intense feature, evidence collection.
Yeah, let's unpack this one carefully. The sources say this is an optional feature that helps gather proof in serious cases, like grooming or blackmail. And it specifically notes this happens with user consent.
Right.
Think about the tonal shift here. We started this deep dive talking about a cozy, sunlit Danish living room, a mom just wanting her kids to enjoy TikTok. Now we are discussing a feature explicitly designed to gather legal, forensic evidence of federal crimes.
It's jarring.
It's like going to the dealership to buy a safe, reliable family minivan and realizing it comes standard with a reinforced bulletproof panic room in the back. It really highlights how severe and hostile the digital landscape has become for children.
It is a profoundly sobering reality check. But it is necessary. If we look back at the marketing video we analyzed earlier, the very last thing on the screen, that end screen text, is big and clear. It says, "Protect your children before it's too late."
Before it's too late. That is heavy.
It's heavy, but it's not just a catchy, fear-mongering slogan. It is the underlying thesis of these advanced features. The developers of Indre Live are acknowledging a hard truth.
Which is?
No matter how good the AI is, no matter how strict the passport verification is, the internet is inherently porous. Human engineering can bypass software. Bad things can still happen.
Right.
When a predator does slip through, the app needs to transition instantly from a filter into a crisis management and legal tool.
And I want to zero in on that phrase from the source with user consent.
Hmm.
When you are in the middle of a blackmail crisis, why is it so important that the app asks for the child's or the parent's consent to gather the evidence? Why not just do it automatically?
Well, there are two main reasons. First, the legal aspect. If you are gathering evidence to hand over to law enforcement to prosecute a groomer, that evidence needs to be legally sound. It has to adhere to data collection laws.
Okay, that makes sense.
But the second reason, and arguably the more important one in the moment, is psychological.
Because the kid feels completely powerless.
Precisely. A victim of grooming or extortion has had all their agency completely stripped away. The predator is dictating their actions through fear.
Yeah.
By requiring the user to actively click a button that says, yes, I consent to gathering this evidence, the app is forcing the victim to take an active role in their own defense. It is a psychological recovery tool.
Wow.
It tells the child, you are no longer just a passive victim waiting for the next threat. We are building a case. You are fighting back. It restores a crucial sense of agency in a moment of total darkness.
That is profound. It gives them the structural tools to fight back legally and systematically.
Yes.
So we've gone deep into the heavy stuff. We've talked about biometric passport scans, algorithms intercepting explicit images, panic rooms, and evidence collection. On paper, this sounds like a digital prison.
It really does.
It sounds incredibly restrictive. You would assume a teenager living under this system would feel totally suffocated. But after discussing all these crisis-level features, we have to look at the actual outcome reported in the sources, because the end result is incredibly counterintuitive.
It challenges a lot of assumptions we have about teenagers and technology.
It really does. This is one of the most surprising takeaways from our entire deep dive. You have an app that requires government ID to log in, blocks your messages, makes your mom approve your friends, and locks your photos in a vault.
Right.
But the source material, quoting the mother, explicitly describes the 12 and 13-year-old girls as so much happier and more relaxed now. They finally feel safe online. How is that possible? Why aren't they rebelling against the surveillance?
To understand why they are happier, we have to look at the psychology of the digital burden. Let's look at the mother first. Before they installed Indre Live, she was terrified. And anxiety is highly, highly transmissible.
Oh, totally.
If a parent is constantly hovering, constantly looking over the child's shoulder, constantly projecting fear about every notification that pops up on the phone, the child absorbs that anxiety. Their digital experience becomes fraught with tension. They feel like they are doing something dangerous just by scrolling.
Right. If the mom is holding her breath every time the phone buzzes, the kid learns to hold her breath too. But because the mother trusts the app, she knows the bouncer is at the door, she backs off. She isn't terrified, so her anxiety isn't bleeding into her daughter's free time.
Exactly. The atmosphere in the house physically changes, but it goes much deeper than that for the children themselves. Imagine the immense unspoken mental load of being a 13-year-old girl on an unmoderated, unfiltered internet.
It sounds exhausting.
You are constantly on guard. You are trying to navigate unsolicited sexual content. You are trying to figure out how to decline perverse messages from older men without escalating the situation or making them angry. And you are constantly trying to spot fake profiles among your peers. It's exhausting, unpaid work.
It's like having to walk through a dangerous, dimly lit neighborhood every single time you open your phone to text your best friend. You're always looking over your shoulder.
And kids don't actually want to do that work. What Indre Live does with its digital bouncer and contact approval is lift that entire exhausting burden off the child's shoulders.
They don't have to be on guard anymore.
Right. The kids are freed from the responsibility of being the sole moderator of their own digital trauma. The bouncer makes the club fun again. They can just be kids. They can watch silly dances on TikTok. They can group chat about school without the underlying gnawing fear of who might be lurking in their DMs.
It really flips our understanding of teenagers. We always think of teenagers as wanting absolute unchecked freedom. Don't tell me what to do. Don't look at my stuff. But it's like putting a fence around the playground. Think about a playground situated right next to a busy, high-speed highway. If there is no fence, the kids don't run wild.
No, they don't.
They actually huddle in the middle of the playground, terrified, because they know one wrong step means they're in the street. Their freedom is completely paralyzed by the ambient danger. But the second you put up a solid 10-foot chain link fence, the kids actually run around more freely.
That's a great point.
They use the entire space. They push the boundaries because they know exactly where the safe edges are. The restriction of the fence actually creates the freedom to play.
That is the perfect analogy, and it points directly to the concluding thought in our source overview. The quote is, "Technology should protect children, not just monitor them."
Right.
For a long time, we equated giving a child a smartphone with basically throwing them into the deep end of the ocean, and the parents were just standing on the beach with binoculars, watching to see if they drown. That was the monitoring era.
The speedometer era. Just watching the data roll in.
Yes. But Indre Live, and apps like it, represent a completely new generation of tools. It recognizes a fundamental reality. Children need the social connection, the digital fluency, and the cultural literacy that the internet provides. That is how they develop independence in the 21st century.
You can't just ban them from it.
You cannot just cut them off. But it combines that necessary access with structural, hard-coded safety. It gives them the freedom of the internet, the joy of the playground, without the terror of the dark web constantly creeping over the edges.
Okay, let's take a breath and recap the incredible journey we've been on today. We started by looking at the fundamental failure of built-in tech updates, how the passive speedometer of screen time just wasn't preventing the crashes parents feared most.
Right.
We deconstructed the incredibly relatable universal fear of the modern parent, brilliantly captured in that cozy, soft cyan glowing vertical UGC ad from the Danish mother. We examined the radical, almost uncomfortable step of identity verification, where users are essentially trading anonymity and passport data for a walled garden of safety.
A huge shift.
We explored how proactive AI filtering acts as a digital bouncer, intercepting trauma before it renders on a screen, and how features like the private vault and evidence collection prepare for the absolute worst-case scenarios.
Yes.
And ultimately, we arrived at this beautiful paradox that strict boundaries, verified protection, and a little bit of friction can actually lead to a happier, more relaxed, and infinitely freer digital childhood.
It is a comprehensive, ground-up reimagining of the digital ecosystem for minors. It really challenges tech giants to do better. But as we look at how effective these radical measures are, it leaves us with a very significant lingering implication for the rest of us.
What's the final thought we should be walking away with here?
Well, if we accept the premise laid out by these sources that the only way to truly guarantee safety, to effectively prevent grooming, and to ensure freedom from targeted harassment online is through strict identity verification like passport scans and facial recognition for 12-year-olds, we have to ask what that means for the broader internet. Are we looking at the beginning of the end of the anonymous internet as we know it?
Wow.
And if making the internet safe for children means removing anonymity entirely from their digital spaces, is that a trade-off adults will soon be forced to make for themselves? Because adults are harassed, scammed, and extorted online every day too. If this model works, how long until every social media platform requires a passport at the door?
That is, wow. If the only way to be truly safe is to prove exactly who you are, the Wild West of the internet might really be closing its doors for good. Think about that the next time you're standing in the kitchen handing a glowing screen to a kid. The weight of that device is changing, the rules of the world inside it are being rewritten right in front of us, and the walls of the garden are getting higher. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the tools you use, keep exploring these crucial digital intersections, and we will see you next time.